I'm about to do something that I have done countless times over the past 5 years, and I'm doing it because I have the privilege of feeling safe enough to do so. Some of you know this already, and some of you only found out when this event was being publicised first time, and then this time. But my name is Theo, and I'm transgender. I was born in Peterborough Hospital. My parents gave me a name that I can no longer really stomach to hear, and a little F was marked on a paper somewhere next to it. I was, and still am, loved by my family. I had a happy childhood, had a good education, and I've lived a relatively normal life. But after university, something shifted. Depression and anxiety set in. Then came the gender dysphoria. I won't go into the details here, but gender dysphoria is generally described as discomfort or distress between one's gender identity and biological sex. Biological sex is assigned at birth. It's usually based on the appearance of genitalia, and gender identity is an internal thing, and it's much harder to pin down. During my early 20s, I went through my life's biggest struggle to date. I cut my hair. I also cut my skin. I changed my clothes and my entire outlook on the world. I broke my mother's heart with careless words. And then I moved from Lincolnshire to Derbyshire overnight. And then I fell in love with God. God saved me quite literally from myself. God enabled me to be sitting here today in a body that I am learning to love, and a heart that longs for unity. Transitioning hasn't been easy or painless. I've had so many blood tests that I'm almost over my phobia of needles now. Instead of taking 20 minutes, they now take just 2 or 3. But I am one of the lucky ones. My story is one of the gentler ones. I still have family and friends. I have a strong faith that helps me through those dark times. I'm in a relatively tolerant and forward-looking country. I am safe enough to go out in the streets in the day without too much fear. I am one of the lucky ones. Coming to faith has had its own challenges, and I am, again, lucky to have had a relatively easy time of it. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that God loves me and has called me to be a part of his church. The first church that I went to of my own volition is a kind and loving environment full of kind and loving people. It isn't openly affirming, though. There, to the general congregation, I was and still am a girl with an unusual name. I came out to the vicar and 1 or 2 other members of the congregation. Their spouses and their kids know, but no one else that I really know of. And don't get me wrong, I love them all, and I am forever grateful for the love and kindness that they've shown me, for the support that they have given me as I've moved about and spoken to them about mental health and other things. But because of how I see the church as an institution, and how the church as an institution has revealed itself to me, I feared to be myself. I didn't correct the she's or the sister comments. I thought it better to lead a double life, shaving on a Sunday and covering myself in makeup, reverting back to the girl that I had been in years before. I preferred to do that than to be open and honest with the people around me. I felt shame, and I let that be my guide instead of the love that I felt. Those of you who have been around me quite a lot in the last 8 months might have noticed I wear quite a few big scarves. Got one on right now for demonstration. It's a really lovely post-Easter April, so I don't need it, but it's not just that I wear these as pretty accessories. It is deliberate. I've done things like this for quite a while in different ways. I cover myself to hide the shape of my body, what other people might see. And my housemates and several other people know that just the other day I bought a ridiculously oversized hoodie, and then I was overjoyed when I put it on and it made me look like a box with feet. But even now, sat here reflecting, understanding who I am and the love that my God has for me, I'm still terrified. I am terrified of what my previous church family might think or say if they watch this, if they find out. I'm terrified of everybody who watches this. I'm terrified of everything they might think, what they might say, the questions they might ask. I am scared of the opinions and the reactions of the people that I love and trust. I'm scared. There was no discouragement in the first church that I went to. There were no cruel words, no negative remarks. But there was no encouragement either. There was no open affirmation. I was, and I am, in limbo, my own specific purgatory of an earthly making. And though I made the choice to bow to the fear and the shame, it is the legacy of the church that has put those options in place. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm speaking. And I do mean that quite literally. I don't want anyone to feel like this. Initiatives like Inclusive Church open the doors of faith to people like me. Open and explicitly affirming churches, welcoming spaces that say, you are safe here, you are welcome here, come inside and meet love itself. Because, to repeat myself, I honestly and wholeheartedly believe and know that God loves me. God loves each and every one of us because of who we are, not in spite of it. Our stories are known before they begin. We can read that in the Psalms. I always tell people to read Psalm 139. God loves us, even if the church doesn't, because it honestly feels like that. And that's where change has to come in. So, I'm making myself vulnerable here for you all. I'm encouraging us all to open that door for this dialogue, just a little in this diocese, or wherever you are right now. It isn't the beginning of the conversation. It isn't the beginning of this talk to do with gender identity, gender non-conforming identities, transgender people. Others have given their stories. Some have been forced to give their stories by the world. But it is still a young conversation. The Church of England has very little to say on the existence of trans people, let alone how we might be involved in ministry. It's only recently made its mind up about how transition affects marriage, and that's a confusing thing to try to explain to anyone who isn't already in the know. I know who I can marry now. It might not be who I want to marry, but at least I have some basis of knowledge there. But there is still so much more ground to cover. We can't reduce gender identity into neat little boxes. It's different for everyone. But for the sake of argument, let's get a little bit technical and talk about the umbrella term transgender. In most cases, it includes the binary, male and female. It also includes non-binary, those identities that are outside that male-female dynamic. There are gender non-conforming identities as well that don't ascribe to being called non-binary. There are many identities that fit under the umbrella, including gender fluid, agender, bigender, intersex or DSD, and many others. I am a transgender man, which means I fit into the gender binary of male. I know someone who is gender fluid, and they identify with different genders on different days at different times. It's less of a spectrum and more of a paint palette with lots of room to mix all the colours. And for anyone who is sceptical, or who takes more of a Piers Morgan view on things, no one is trying to identify as a helicopter or a penguin, and just saying that invalidates the struggle of trans people. It invalidates our struggles over innumerable years to try and be recognised for who we are. Making sweeping statements about so-called snowflakes is dangerous. It's harmful. real people, people that you might know, are damaged by those statements. When we first did this event in St Martin's Church in Hereford, we had time to gather and to talk and discuss different ways of inclusion, of how to include people in the church. I heard a lot to do with physical space, and it was a fantastic discussion. And we will have time to have a chat and go through some of the questions in a few minutes, maybe. And I pray that it will be just as beneficial now as it was in March. It often feels like the trans issue is feared or avoided simply out of confusion or misinformation. And it can be confusing. No one is saying that it isn't. I get confused sometimes. But it only takes a little conversation, a few clarifications to make things clearer. Inclusion of trans and gender non-conforming people needs to come from the top echelons for any deeper, meaningful change to happen. And that isn't happening anytime soon. It's not happening at any great speed. But there are things that we can do in the meantime. Accessible and non-gendered toilets. They remove the element of fear and judgment. We no longer have to out ourselves just by needing to go to the loo. Liturgy that doesn't rely so heavily on gendered language, that can be adapted and changed, will go miles to help put people at ease. Open expressions of love and affirmation in everyday services. That's the kind of thing that encourages people to walk through the doors. A little mark on your general orders of service that says that this is an affirming church, specifically for LGBTQ people. We can't let this be ambiguous. Ambiguity gets you nowhere. But of course, we also need the open dialogue of people who want to know more, people who want to understand and move forward to a greater understanding together. We all have to start somewhere. So start here. Start today. Ask a question, seek an answer. If you are challenged by transgender identities, ask yourself why. Gently ask yourself why. If you are the praying kind, then pray. Seek God's counsel. We are all learning. We are all on this journey together. So let's learn together.